Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that. But don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, it's a new week of CinemAddicts. New episode, new movies. This is covering the week of Friday, November 17th. It's been an eventful week. We've been covering a lot of movies. I'm joined by my betters, Eric Holmes and Bruce Purkey. Bruce Purkey is rocking a white Descendants shirt. Bruce, what was the inspiration for that awesome shirt that you are rocking for this episode?
My brother sent it to me because it was from one of their tours, but it's made to look like a Corrosion of Conformity shirt, but it's turned into Descendants, so it's kind of an odd kind of an amalgamation of icons from the punk-ish world, if you're aware of those bands.
Yeah. Do you still have those punk roots, Bruce? Do you still listen to punk music from that era, from the 80s, late 70s? Is that...
Sure. I've got... Well, I'm trying to see what I can see from here.
The Clash, are they up? Is the Clash big for you, or were they too populist for you? The Clash?
I like the first Clash album quite a bit, and there's some good stuff on London Calling. Descendants, I got their first album, Milo Goes to College, on my wall. We have a little record wall that we switch out the records, so you can just kind of redecorate our wall all the time with different records. So, yeah. Did
your sons inherit your love for that era of music?
My youngest, he likes Green Day, which is, more poppy and stuff. But he also is into he's 13, so he's into Rage Against the Machine and System of a Down and that kind of stuff. So he's working his way there. He's getting his own style.
Okay, he's working his way up to the good stuff, as one would say, Bruce, possibly.
No, I like some of that stuff too, so I'm not against it.
Okay, Eric Holmes, punk rock, was that a part of your purview as a youth when you were in your 20s? And I'm thinking you in your 20s, maybe where you were part of a band. I'm guessing you were so into music maybe 20 years back.
Yeah, my first band was a punk band, kind of like Minor Threat-esque, I guess. And then cool. After that, lean more towards metal, but kind of similar ballpark all around.
Would he have enjoyed your Minor Threat-ish band back in the day, you think? The way you guys...
I think so. Because I haven't heard the songs in decades at this point, but I recall they were pretty good for the genre, I think. Okay. But I'm in the band, I'm biased. It's we were really good, and then you listen to it and go, Eric, that was not good.
So speaking of biases, a little bit of a plug for our CinemAddicts Patreon members. For this month in November, it is Movember. By the way, Movember. Eric Holmes is rocking the Movember stash. It looks very, very good on you, Eric Holmes. I had to capitulate to my family. I took off my mustache. Bruce still has the beard and mustache working. And
I'm wearing it for both of us.
Well, thank you so much, Bruce. But for this month of November/Movember, it's Eric Holmes' month. What is your choice for Patreon for our bonus episode again?
My choice is Project Alf. Starring Martin Sheen and a Blink and You'll Miss It cameo by Lin Shaye.
And, of course, Alf. So,
he's in it too, I suppose.
Last time I checked, I believe Project Alf is available to stream on the Peacock network. On Peacock, it's streaming there. So I will be watching this movie. Is it a movie or a contraption? But who knows? I'm not going to spoil. Eric's not going to spoil whether he loves it or not. He's already seen it. Maybe he might see it again, but I think he saw it recently. I will watch Project Alf. Bruce, have you ever seen Project Alf? Are you excited to see this movie within the next 2 weeks?
I am weirdly excited. It sounds like a real odd thing. It's kind of like when they did try to reboot the Munsters, but not like the recent one, but like when they had the original cast when they rebooted it for TV, or when they rebooted Gilligan's Island and it was the Harlem Globetrotters as robots, if I remember correctly. I don't know. One of those kind of things where they take a TV series and they kind of try to revive it as a sort of a quasi movie, and it usually gets interesting results.
All right, Bruce, specifically Bruce and I were around. Of course you were too, Eric, but maybe you were a little bit younger. But I think, Bruce, you and I pointedly remember the Alf era. Who knows? Maybe the 1996 film, which we're covering. We're covering the year 1996 for November. Maybe Project Alf or Alf the movie, or I'd like to call it Eric's latest Trash Humpers pick. We'll see. It might work. It might work for us. The second pick for Patreon is courtesy of our members. Thank you, Ryan Smith and Peter Beta. Peter Beta, him being the head honcho over the middle class film class crew. We love those guys. These are the Patreon members who picked some of the movies that we should check. The second movie to go alongside Project Alpha. Eric Holmes, can you do the honors? What are the 4 movies that we may use for our second pick?
Yes. Number 1, we have Barbed Wire. Number 2, we have
Okay, Eric, that's enough.
Number one, we have Hard 8. Number 2, we have Long Kiss Goodnight. Number 3, we have 2 Days in the Valley. Should have been number 2, I guess. Number 4, we have Sling Blade.
Okay, let's see what we got. So I only have 4 things to randomize the second. Again, thanks again to Ryan Smith and Peter Beta for those choices. Let's see what we got. What was number 1 again? Number 1 is a choice.
Hard 8.
Hard 8. Or what is Hard 8 also? Sydney. Thank you, Eric Holmes. Hard 8, directed by PTA, aka Paul Thomas Anderson. That will be our movie this month. That is a Patreon choice. Thank you, Ryan Smith, for that choice. Hard 8 and Project Alf. Moving forward, we will be taping that record. They will record that show on November 29th, the last day for our Patreon members. So we apologize. November 28th, 29th, it just worked that way. Next week, it's going to be sort of a Thanksgiving weekend. A lot of stuff I need to put on the Patreon feed. A lot of spoilers that we have from several movies. I will be posting those things up shortly. So thank you guys so much for supporting us on Patreon. Let us get to our regular feed, our movies. Bruce Purkey, how has the last week of movie watching been for you? Has it been just great stuff? A lot of the things to look forward to in this episode or not?
I think there's some really interesting things to look forward to in this episode. It's been a real variety as far as styles of things to watch. I mean, we had for myself at least, a documentary, part of a TV series, 2 documentaries for myself, I guess. I guess we're going to revisit Anatomy of a Fall, so serious Oscar-y kind of movie. And then what else did we have? The
Anatomy of a Fall thing, that's a joke. We're continuing to kick the can.
We can do that. We'll just wait till it gets we'll wait till it's officially on Tubi, and then we'll say, like, now it's available on Tubi, we'll talk about it.
Eric, you are the co-writer in this submarine theory. Are you going to submarine the review of Anatomy of a Fall for one more week? You will break the tie. I'm all about submarining it. Bruce is not. He's a man of integrity. What is your vote? What is your vote care. Will Anatomy of a Fall for one more week before we discuss it, Eric?
Time will tell. Time will tell. But I'm down to talk about it this week because the longer it goes, the more my brain just deletes from my memory, as it tends to do.
Well, I love that. Eric Holmes of the Courtroom Drama, a very good rebuttal. I like that argument. Let us talk about Anatomy of a Fall. This episode, that would be Bruce and Eric talking about it. But we also have Monarch, The Stones and Brian Jones, again, Anatomy of a Fall, The Disappearance of Shere Hite, and Do Not Disturb, a movie that Eric saw, which seems very interesting. And the box movie is Bob Le Flambeur. I think it's also called in English, Bob the Gambler. Let's start off with an Apple TV Plus project called Monarch. This might be the movie that I think the series that I think a lot of people will be interested in. It's monsters. The Russell family are in it. Eric and I didn't get a chance to watch it. Bruce, you're going to take it away with what this series is about.
Sure. I did not write down all of the actors' names, so if you need to spice that in there for me, go for it. Otherwise, I'll just kind of describe the basic concept. This kind of fits into the same category as, so in the MCU, you've got all the tentpole movies, and then you have all of the series that are out on Disney Plus that are somehow in between the cracks of the movies. They either link movies together or they give you backstory to a movie, something like that. All of the current Godzilla, King Kong movies are considered, I guess, part of a monster universe. I don't know what they're calling it, but they do interlock in one way or another. And Monarch is kind of this mysterious quasi-government agency that somehow is involved with, keeping them under wraps or keeping them under control or protecting the world from them or controlling them. There's always been a little bit of a cloudy, murky causality behind Monarch. So that's kind of the basis of this series, right? And what is interesting, I think, about the series, if you like those films, and I'm a fan up or down on those movies, they're all fun or better. I think they're good to great. If you like those kind of movies, this is going to give you some good stuff too. Basic concept. You have 2 groups. You have a present and a past group. So the most notable cast member here is going to be, or cast members are the Russells, right? So you've got Wyatt Russell and Kurt Russell, and Kurt Russell plays the older version of Leland Shaw, and Wyatt Russell plays the younger version. Throughout the series, you're going back and forth. So in the current day, which is, I think, I didn't write it down, but I think it's like 2015-ish, right? So it's about just after kind of the first Godzilla movie in the recent round. This young woman who was in that destructive event, her dad has gone missing, and she goes off to Japan, to where, never having visited his homeland, to go find him, because she has these keys and she has some information about where he might be. She gets there only to discover he had a second family. He had two families. That was weird. And then on top of that, he was somehow involved with Monarch, which she knows nothing about. The minute she starts using the information she's getting, Monarch is somehow tapped into it, and they're trying to track her down because they know that she's got some stuff that they want.
This sounds very interesting, like really well written.
It's pretty cool. I think it's pretty fun. And one of the things that a lot of people didn't like about some of the movies were that they spent a lot of time with the people and the stories weren't so interesting. I think they do something similar here as far as spending a lot of time with the people, but I feel like it's more interesting and more fleshed out because they have the time. What is really great about this series, I think, is the old stuff. So you immediately are meeting that young woman's grandmother and Wyatt Russell, his character, what's his name, Shaw, and he's like this military escort that's been given to her. He doesn't know what's going on. She is researching these creatures and no one knows what's going on yet. They're still new at that time. And they meet up with another guy, and he's like a scientist. So there's three of them. And they go jump back and forth a little bit in the old time too, right? So it's nice to be 1954, 1957. So you'll get to see them when they're brand new and they don't know anything about what they're discovering other than they're looking for something mysterious, till there's times when they know what they're looking for and the government's involved and they're fighting with the government, plus also dealing with these monsters. And every episode has some sort of, appearance of monsters, either past or present. I think it's a lot of fun. And I've seen 3 episodes so far. They build upon each other. I'm interested in both story tracks, and the monster stuff is really good. So I think people who like those movies will be excited and have a lot of fun with this.
So no disappointments, meaning will there be people who might be disappointed because it's just a lot too much story for them, where they want something more of a creature feature thing, or not?
They might be. They might be. I could see that. I think if you're into the movies, I think you'll be into this. If you were like, I watched the movies and the only one I liked was Kong versus Godzilla or Kong Skull Island, because those are the kind of the most action-packed of the bunch, then you might be like, too much story. Yeah, I think it's worth giving a try no matter what. I think a couple episodes in, if you're not in, don't go for it. But I'm still in. I'm going to watch the rest. If I hadn't had all these other movies to watch, I would have continued and finished the series. It's like 8 episodes, if I remember correctly.
So it was almost a bingeable experience for you, pretty much, barring all those movies. Okay.
And they're pretty good about giving you little cliffhangers. They usually end with some kind of a monster battle or something that will kind of propel you forward. Or, for example, when you get to actually see Kurt Russell appear, I think it's episode 2, you're like, oh, he's in. And then you're like, oh, cool. And I will tell you, I've only got 3 episodes in, but he is not just like, I'm going to be here for a few seconds and not be here for the rest of the series, because in episode 3, he was all over that episode. So he's definitely makes a pretty strong appearance.
Is he the Thing in the movie?
I was watching his breath and I couldn't tell if he was breathing or not. So he might be the Thing. I'm not sure.
As Bruce was saying about peppering the sort of your review with the other actors involved, the ensemble includes, along with Wyatt Russell and Kurt Russell, you have, my bad on the pronunciation, Anna Sawai, Kiersey Clemens, we've seen her in a bunch of films, Ren Watabe, Marie Yamamoto, Anders Holm, Joe Tippett, and Elisa Lasowski. So that is Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, premiering Friday, November 17th on Apple Plus TV. The first 2 episodes will be available Bruce is one of the select few in the universe who has about 8 episodes involved. So he's what does it feel like to be one of the Apple TV Plus's gloried ones, Bruce Purkey?
No, man. If anyone wants any secrets, you might have to. I'm not going to say anything, but envelope slides under the door. I might be able to give you some clues.
How dare you? Eric and I want a cut of whatever you're getting or skimming, Bruce Purkey. Apple TV Plus's Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Do you have a sort of an initial rating from the 3 episodes you have?
At this point, I'm kind of at a 4-star rating, and it could go up. I mean, it could go down too, obviously, but I think if anything, it could go up depending on how the storylines kind of resolve themselves,
Okay. Very, very cool. Thank you, Bruce, for your review. Now we're off to Eric Holmes for something I tell Bruce and Eric every single time we're done with the show. I go, Bruce, I always say, hey, Bruce, Eric, great to see you, but whatever you do for 7 days, do not disturb Greg Sruzavasti. Do not disturb me, Eric Holmes. So, Eric, you took that to heart. You saw a movie called Do Not Disturb. It's out in theaters November 17th and VOD November 21st. The reason why I was excited about this movie is it's getting some really interesting reviews or good reviews. Are those good reviews warranted? What was your initial thoughts of Do Not Disturb, and what is this movie about?
Oh, what it's about? Let's see if I can figure that out. Well, it started off kind of, the couple played by Kimberly LaFerriere and Rogan Christopher is Chloe and Jack, and they're an insufferable couple. And all I was thinking was, these people do not need to be together. I cannot wait for them to break up and live their happy lives separately. But last they go to this hotel. Apparently, it's an adults-only hotel. They meet up with a couple played by Janet Porter and Christian McKenna. And this couple, they kind of seem annoying, like on the surface. And then Chloe and Jack go and meet up with them. Wayne's like, hey, do you guys party? And Jack's like, hell yeah, we do. So they go to their hotel room, start doing some cocaine. It turns out the cocaine's laced with ecstasy. They basically swap partners, and then that just makes the Chloe and their relationship even more difficult. And at one point they're just like, you know what, let's just go to the beach. And at the beach, this guy wakes up and he's just like, I don't know where I am. I don't know what happened. I don't even know how I got here. Here, take this. And he takes a bunch of drugs out of his pocket, mostly peyote, and it's like, here, take it. I don't want it anymore. And he just walks out into the ocean and it just disappears. They're just watching him like, oh, he'll come back. Did he just die in front of us?
Oh my God.
And so Jack's like, oh, we got these drugs. I'm going to sell them. Chloe's like, oh, no, you're a drug dealer now. And like, they're fighting over that as they fight over everything. And then they're like, screw it, let's take it. And then so they take the peyote. Nothing, they're like, I'm not high. Are you high? I'm like, no, I don't think so. And then they end up having sex. And then Jack keeps like biting Chloe. She's like, what the hell are you doing? And then they, start kind of going on their little peyote trip. Then later on, they have sex again. And Chloe starts biting Jack. And then this is where the movie kind of starts getting going. What do I say about? Do I just end it there? It starts to get.
Eric. You're being very considerate. I'm going to tell you what it's about. I mean, so you can actually see the boundaries here. Quote, a psychedelic horror film wrapped in a failed marriage and cannibalism comes to theaters and digital this November. So you can unwrap whatever you want to.
Okay. So then once they start taking this peyote, or what they think is peyote, I think it's probably something a little more. They start biting each other. And at one point, like Chloe and Jack's having sex, and Chloe like just bites a chunk out of Jack's back. Jackal on his back-o. And it's okay. At another point, so basically, as they take more peyote through the rest of the movie, they get not really a hunger for human flesh. They just kind of do it. Like they'll wake up, just kind of like you see maybe a werewolf movie. That someone will wake up naked in the middle of the woods, covered in blood, and they're like, "What happened?" Like they wake up and there's a dead body in their house, and they're like, "What did we do?" And like the body's like, and so that's kind of what it is. And it's this movie's really, really good. It started off kind of annoying because I was like, oh no, I don't want to watch this movie. But like as they started taking drugs and as things got more crazy, this movie went from like 0 to weird really, really fast. And I kind of loved it. And it's
would you call it like slow burn a little bit, and then it just becomes a whole different level of just.
Actually, maybe I'm wrong. It's not like it does turn crazy real fast, but it kind of sneaks up on you. Like, it, Greg, you're a big druggie, you know this. And like when you take drugs, you're like kind of like, I don't feel anything. And then all of a sudden, like something just seems odd to you. And then it just kind of creeps up on you. This is kind of what this movie does.
Okay. Yeah.
And like it goes, it goes from 0 to 40 real quick, but it's like it does kind of ease the in at the same time. It's weird to say, but yeah, this is the very beginning of this movie and the very end of this movie, I felt like completely different, because like opening, I was just like, oh no. And I think the movie's only like an hour and 20 minutes or hour 30. And it's like real short, but it has like the way that it presents itself. It kind of, I don't want to say it's epic, but it kind of, it feels longer than it is, but not in a bad way. It feels like a full meal.
Is it gory? Is it very good in its thriller elements? Anything you would suggest people like not into gore? Or is it
there are some parts that are, but I think it does like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing, where I think it's less gory than it seems, because the spots that they use it are really well done. So in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, it's just a bloodbath from front to back. But then like you would actually watch and go, they kind of like cut away or more suggestive. Like they use a lot of like there's definitely parts where you see one of them like just eating flesh, but then like the sound effects they use and stuff are, I think, sell it more than the visuals do. So it's definitely gory, but I don't think it's as gory as it could be. I guess kind of like Fresh would be a good example of this.
Oh, okay, good.
Where like Fresh has like it's definitely gory, but it picks its moments. So when it does get there, it's a lot more, it hits you a lot harder than it would if it were just blood.
So that is Do Not Disturb in theaters November 17th. For most of you guys, you may be able to check it out on VOD November 21st. What is your rating on Do Not Disturb, Eric Holmes?
I'd probably give this a 4.5.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is definitely like out of left field. Again, the title, I will forget that title by next week, but the movie I will not forget at all.
What's Bruce going to think of this movie?
I think Bruce will like it. In fact, I think Anderson might like this.
Who's who's Anderson? Is he
Anderson Cowan of the Film Vault fame? You may have heard of him.
Yes. Okay. And documentary Loaded for Bear, of course.
Yeah, but it's got enough like kind of dark comedy that I think Anderson could really sink his teeth into. I did not just say that. I just said that.
When did you become the resident comic? I've been listening to all of the past episodes. Little gems there, Eric Holmes. Love it. A lot of rim shots. Sink his teeth.
Yeah, and I've been seeing stand-up comedy once or twice. Bombed once or twice, but it still did it.
Very good. Okay, so this was a surprise. I am glad that you're giving 4.5 stars to Do Not Disturb. Hopefully, I don't know. Bruce and I don't know if we have time to watch it, but I think it's a good recommend. So if people have $5 or $6 on November 21st, check out Do Not Disturb. Get back to Eric and tell Eric what you think of this movie. Now it's my turn to actually review a movie with Bruce Purkey, The Stones and Brian Jones. There was a one-night only event from last week as far as screening wise, but it will be available everywhere on November 17th. And that's really good. So November 17th, which is this Friday. And it's directed by Nick Broomfield, very good documentarian. I love his style. I love a bunch of his movies. He narrates, I think, most of his movies. He's just has that certain aesthetic that I appreciate in documentarians, documentary filmmakers. This doc is only 93 minutes. And really, there's nothing much to say about the plot of this doc. It's about the Stones and Brian Jones. Actually, the moniker could be flipped because it's really mainly about Brian Jones and his relationship with the Stones. If you're a fan of the Rolling Stones, you're going to appreciate this documentary. If you're like me, who I have a passing interest in the Rolling Stones. I have a few of their albums. I wanted to learn a lot more about Brian Jones and why he was kicked off the band or why he was fired from the band. This gives you all the information you need to know. So this is pretty much I don't want to say predictable, but it's going to appeal to a straight audience as far as if you're a Rolling Stones fan and if you want to know the history about Brian Jones. It gives some really insightful stuff because you get to talk to his family, former lovers, former girlfriends, and especially some members of the Rolling Stones. There's also some archival footage that Broomfield accrues throughout the documentary. So this is a solid recommend for me. Bruce, do you feel the same way as far as this documentary?
Yeah, this is one of those ones that I think there's a perfect spot, I think, to watch this documentary. And I think it's kind of like you talked about, that person who has a passing interest in the Stones, or kind of likes the Stones, but doesn't know a ton about them, especially maybe their early years. Maybe you've heard of Brian Jones. Maybe you haven't heard of Brian Jones. That, I think, is going to be the most value added. I was pretty familiar with the general story of Brian Jones and who he was and kind of the role he played and how he was essentially the founder of the Rolling Stones and considered the most talented musician, at least in the early 6 to 7 years of the band, and how he eventually had a falling out. And then I kind of knew his fate with the band. I'll leave it at that. So that stuff wasn't really very much value added to me. And that is the problem for me. So I think that if you're kind of in my camp, you're pretty familiar with him and his story, then this becomes kind of like a rock star. Guy becomes famous, gets into drugs, has problems, womanizes a lot, has problems, doesn't get along with the band. Oh. I mean, it's like, okay, I have heard this in every behind the music ever made back in the 90s. It isn't very interesting to me in that aspect. The stuff that it hinted around with his relationship with his father and his parents and stuff like that, to me, that was some of the most interesting stuff. So I kind of would maybe heard a little more of that would have been good for me. And there was tons of stuff about all the various women that he essentially fathered children with and basically forgot about. And that didn't make me like him anymore, that's for sure. So for me, it was interesting enough, but it definitely didn't add much to me. So I would give it a barely recommend.
I would have liked interviews with the children, maybe even just for a short segment. Would that have helped a little
interesting. Bit? Well, they kept saying 5 children by different, basically groupies or women that he said, "Oh, I love you, and can I live in your house for a while? Oh, I'm going to make sure you have a child, and then I'll be out." That's kind of what he did a lot. So not the greatest guy.
So I think Bruce, what you said is correct. If you're like someone like me who has a passing interest in the Rolling Stones, Brian, trying to understand who Brian Jones was, I think this is a perfect documentary to watch as a primer to just the Rolling Stones history as far as that universe goes. So for me, the Stones and Brian Jones available everywhere on November 17th. 4-star rating for me for this documentary. What about you, Bruce?
3 stars for me. It's just barely passes.
Okay, it's a mild recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Barely passes. I will take a barely pass. So I'm fine with that. So next up is, I was going to go for another documentary. 3 stars for Bruce, 4 stars for me, and Eric, 4.5 stars for Do Not Disturb. I wanted to kick the can one more week, but there's a movie that's 151 minutes that I remember Bruce Purkey about a month and a half ago was asking for screener links for us to cover. And I looked at the running time and I was like, 151 minutes. Maybe I'll look at other movies and sort of overlook this movie. And then as the weeks go on, Bruce watches it and then Eric watches it. And then I feel guilty that Bruce and Eric have seen it and they have their own reaction to this movie. Eric was talking about, maybe we should do a spoiler. And I'm just kicking the friggin' can on this movie. And I think I'm doing a really horrible job at movie reporting in lieu of Anatomy of a Fall. I think it's sort of a murder mystery investigation about a couple and someone is killed. And so, who Eric or Bruce? Bruce, you want to just talk about what the plot line is? And then Eric, you can...
Oh, you want to do it, Bruce?
Either one. I don't care.
So basically the short version is a husband, wife, and their blind child live in this house together. The blind child's walking around outside and he bumps up on a body and it's his dad. And he supposedly fell off the roof or something, but he's on the ground dead. And the cops show up. They do a bunch of forensics to figure out what's going on. They think it's a suicide, but they're not quite sure. And as they look into it more, they think perhaps the wife had something to do with it. And it goes from, I guess, soup to nuts from the time the body is found all the way to the court case at the end and figure out whether she's found guilty or not guilty. I don't know, Bruce, much more than that as far as story goes.
The setup at the beginning, the one thing I think is kind of interesting is it starts out with the the woman. Did I write down the names here? Maybe.
I did 2 weeks ago, but it's
right.
That's my fault. That's my fault.
So I think it's Sandra. Sandra Hüller, I believe, might be the main woman. If I'm wrong, I apologize. By the way, this is directed by Justine Triet. It starts out with the wife, and she's being interviewed for a new book or something about being an author. She's a famous author. She's being interviewed, and very quickly you hear the husband, who's upstairs renovating the attic area of this kind of chalet in the mountains. He puts on music, and he puts it on deafeningly loud during an interview that she's having. And it's obvious that he must be doing that to annoy her. She gets very annoyed. It cuts off the interview. So that's kind of the setup. The kid goes out and walks the dog. Kid comes back, stumbles upon the body. The interviewer has left before this. So the obvious question is, oh, well, they were fighting, so maybe she killed him. That's kind of a little part of that setup too. I think that, and once again, I'll let Eric chime in on what his thoughts about the overall kind of approach to this movie. What's very interesting about this movie, first of all, it's a good courtroom drama. It's an interesting courtroom drama. It sets it up in a way that you really can be torn on whether you think she's guilty or not. They don't give you a lot of tells. They want you to really kind of be in the seat of a juror in that sense. Like you're getting evidence, but you're not shown enough to fully decide. But what I thought was very, very interesting about this movie is the kind of the path of the child, because the child definitely thinks one thing, and then the child is there through the whole trial, even to the point there's parts of the trial where there's going to be testimony, and even I think there's some recordings and stuff they're going to play. And they're like, well, you might not want to have the child here for this. And he's like, no, I should be able to hear this. This is my life too. I should be interested in part of this. You're basically watching this child after the fact get an inside view of his parents' relationship in a way that a child usually wouldn't. That is a really, really interesting twist I think this movie has. I think it's a really fine, dramatic crime movie. It's not really a thriller, I would say, but a crime trial drama.
I would also add, like, the courtroom drama aspect of it doesn't really feel, on the surface, it definitely appears like a courtroom drama. The way that lawyers argue back and forth feel more like a court of public opinion than an actual court. A lot of their arguments are not arguments you typically find in a courtroom. It's like, here's one hypothesis of how he could have fell. And here's another hypothesis. And it's like, well, they're equal, so the burden of proof is on you. Yeah, but you can't prove that that's not how it happened. It's like, no. Well, you're not guilty until proven innocent. It's the other way around.
But so. Eric, that's true, right? But isn't it, that's kind of weird about this? It's a French court. So yeah. It's different. It's like this kind of this freewheeling, almost like dialogue they're having. And I thought that was kind of fascinating how they did stuff.
Yeah. Well, also like the prosecuting attorney, he's like constantly interrupting the defense attorney. Like there might be one time where he didn't interrupt them, but he's like constantly interrupting. And then as soon as the prosecuting attorney says something and someone chimes in, he's like, hey, I'm talking here. It's like, I'm not familiar with the French court, but that cannot be how they run things there. But that's absolutely how people argue in real life. So yeah. It's kind of I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's definitely what I got from this as far as the courtroom part is concerned. And I think it kind of works with the what you mentioned with the kid. It's like whether or not someone's guilty or not guilty in the eyes of the law, the court of public opinion has something to say too. And I think they merge. So like what I'm describing sounds like a flaw, but I think it's actually a feature because it kind of takes the way that people argue in real life with fallacies and all set in a courtroom setting. It kind of merges the two ideas, I think.
And one other thing I'll add into this, the format of the movie. So, right, we have initial event. We don't see the whole thing, obviously, so we don't know what happened. Then you have a whole bunch of courtroom stuff and some drama inside and outside the courtroom. You would expect throughout the courtroom drama to maybe have flashbacks to the past to see the events, which they resist throughout to doing that, except for one key extended flashback, which is pretty amazing, where there's a audio played, and then instead of just playing the audio, they actually cut to the scene. And they really, really intelligently, and this is where I think writing/directing is really key in this movie, at a point in that audio that we're viewing the event of, they cut away before violence occurs, so that when the violence does occur, you still don't know exactly who perpetrated the violence or how that went down. So it's very, very clever about how it keeps you constantly having to weigh back and forth kind of where you feel about the guilt and innocence of the various members of this trial.
Okay, so that is. Oh, Eric, you want to say something? You were about to say something?
No, that's. I think I would have to get into some spoilers, but I think just overall, it kind of, especially with the courtroom stuff, it does stuff that under normal circumstances would bug the living crap out of me. But the way they handle it in this, it's kind of like, I get what you're doing, and I kind of like it.
Okay, Anatomy of Fall running at 151 minutes. I'm going to put words into Eric and Bruce's mouth and saying that 151 minutes didn't feel like a slog. It seems like you guys really enjoyed this film. Let's get to ratings. First off, Eric Holmes, your rating.
I'd probably go 5 stars on this.
Okay. Bruce Purkey?
4.5.
4.5 stars. Okay. 5 stars, Eric. One of your favorites of the year. I'm assuming with Anatomy of Fall. 4.5. Not so bad for me.
Courtroom drama, you get that half-star bump.
half star.
I would point out, I believe they also covered this on the Hollywood Persona podcast with Mitch Burns.
Burns, yes.
And you should probably listen to that because they go like really deep into this. So there you go. Check it out.
Check out Mitch Burns, the Hollywood Persona podcast. Check out the Middle Class Film Class podcast with Peter Beta. And of course, Jason Kleberg's Force 5 podcast. These are our buddies and our fellow, what would you say, Bruce, our cinematic brethren, our fellow cinephiles, just friends? I don't know how to speak in human terms. What should I say, Bruce?
that our fellow cinematics. Yes.
Fellow cinematics. Okay, they are
their own cinema-holes. Oh, wait, no, that's us.
The family show. You know what? I actually changed our show from explicit to clean, but cinema-holes is not, that's not a bad word because you're combining. I like it.
Holes.
It's very good. Very, very family show. I love it. Before we get to recommends and Bruce's box film of the week, which is Bob the Gambler, let's get to another documentary. We are documentary laden this week with The Disappearance of Shere Hite.
Today, this much publicized author has agreed to face an audience filled entirely with men.
The Hite Report, the book, stunned everyone with the clitoris and the vagina.
Is one orgasm sexually satisfying? If not, how many? How that's done should be incorporated into a lot of lovemaking.
Every woman's going to want to read this, and men should too. They hated the book. They tried to sabotage it. Keep it down.
It sold like hotcakes.
It's the 30th best-selling book of all time.
How can you shut somebody like this up?
Shere Hite was this wonderful creature, very striking, very beautiful.
But her real interest was more intellectually advanced.
If you wanted to write about sex, you would just make men totally crazy.
She was criticized by some of the reviewers.
What she says is always controversial.
Hite Report gave voice to people who never had a voice, to experiences thousands of women never even discussed before.
This is going to lead to real changes in sex between men and women. Is there any danger in that? Equality doesn't seem dangerous to me.
People criticized her methodology so they could discount her findings.
Everything I've heard about her has been negative.
A lot of people who criticize the book haven't even read the book.
Shere knew sexuality could be weaponized.
Accused of man-bashing.
Yeah, and it's going to happen right here.
She can't make a living in this country. She's being silenced.
We were walking by her apartment. The doorman said she doesn't live here.
Feminist knowledge, century after century, decade after decade. Well, who is she? You've got to be kidding me.
I don't hear people talking about her anymore.
I just find it troublesome that younger women will have to fight the same battles over again.
I just wanna be a woman.
And I'm reading from the description. It says, quote, a thrilling portrait of groundbreaking sex researcher or sexologist Shere Hite Her explosive rise to fame and notoriety, and her mysterious retreat from the public eye, this doc hits select theaters starting Friday, November 17th at Los Angeles' AMC Burbank 16. So we're assuming by November 24th, maybe first week of December, there will be some kind of select theater rollout for the Disappearance of Shere Hite. As far as just movie star sheen to it, the project is executive produced and narrated by Dakota Johnson. And once you know a little bit about Shere Hite, who is the author of that sex research book, The Hite Report, which is really big in its day. It's sort of a counterpoint to the Masters and Johnson survey. And it's a big deal back in the 70s, I think through the 80s as well. Shere Hite as an individual, her figure, her knowledge might have been diminished over the years. And this documentary attempts to shed light on who Shere Hite was, and why did she disappear? Bruce, did this documentary appeal to you?
Yeah, it did. And this is kind of interesting because if you look at the two documentaries we had this week, you could say that both could have something in common. Both are about people who were very famous in their day, in the 70s, late 60s. So people now watching it are going to have a value added no matter what by like discovering these people, right? So that they have that in common. The difference to me is that the story of Shere Hite is fascinating and has broad implications on society and sexuality and women's rights and just the nature of how we deal with that in the media and how we deal with that in politics. There's a lot going on here, and it's very, very interesting. Also, I thought about this as Dakota Johnson is, narrating the parts where Shere Hite's writings are being read, because there's a whole bunch of real footage of Shere Hite, like tons and tons. So most of the time it's actually Shere Hite that you're hearing and seeing. But I thought if they ever make a biopic of this, then Mia Goth would be fantastic for this role as well. I
agree. Hite is a very she was a very magnetic person.
Yes. So just to kind of lay the groundwork, she was very beautiful throughout her life. She started out as a model. She started out in graduate school. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. She starts out in graduate school, immediately is discounted by the professors and stuff as, you didn't do this. You probably got this from somewhere else. You didn't actually write this.
Yeah, you're not intelligent. You're a woman, basically what they're saying.
Yeah. Immediately. Did you watch it, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't see you on here, so I didn't know you watched it. Okay.
Yeah,
so yes, chime in. And then, so to kind of make her way, she does things like models, and she becomes like the model for the James Bond illustrations and Pulp Fiction books, like tons of things that you would never know it was her, but she was all over popular culture and not even acknowledged who that was. And that's before she even starts this. And she very quickly gets into feminism and women's rights and gender rights. And she's just trying to make her way in the world. And she has this idea, like one thing that women never talk about is their actual sexual lives, especially back then. Like, what do they actually like? What do they not like? What do they feel nervous to admit? What do they feel nervous to ask about? So she just starts sending out these questionnaires, which are like, 30 questions long, and they're very detailed questions. They're just open-ended things like, when was the first time that you pleasured yourself, or did you know how to do it? Just stuff like that. And so people would just write back long returns, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of these. And she compiles them into a book through a lot of heartache and stuff. And all the way she's meeting people and meeting up with various socialites and up and coming people in Manhattan and New York. And she's just making her way, becomes world famous. There's a lot of interesting things here. It's interesting just in kind of what she illuminates about the world, about the gender roles, especially at the time when it's all blowing up in the 70s. But it's also very interesting to see how the pathway of her life and her career is affected and controlled by the forces that controlled the world. The media and the rise of gotcha media, the rise of conservatism, the neoconservatism in the 80s through now, and how it crushed this woman for even attempting to put this stuff out there. It's a fascinating story. If you think Gene Simmons will not appear in this, you're wrong. If you think Donna Summer will not appear in this, you're also wrong. It's fascinating. I really love this documentary.
Yeah, she's a very magnetic person. She's also, I think her main thing, this is not a spoiler, her main goal was to provide a voice, an outlet for people to express the interior lives of women. That's when she started out. And I thought what was interesting is once the Hite, this is not once the Hite Report becomes successful, a bestseller, and there were so many steps that a lot of the publishing bigwigs decided did not want this to be a bestseller and make them money, which they get into a little bit in the documentary. But it's interesting to see what she did with her success, which I found very endearing and very interesting, because I'm telling you, if someone gave me a big check, I would probably go on a sailboat, leave Eric and Bruce. I'll say, Bruce, take over my Acast podcasting account. Oh, I'll leave. I'm going to leave. But she decides to go a different route, and she thanks. Well, I don't want to get too much, but she's a very interesting and at times, in my opinion, magnanimous person with the people who she knows and she loves, her colleagues. There are so many different layers to this documentary. Also, the look of this documentary, it provides a really interesting look at New York in, like Bruce was saying, the late 60s, early to mid 70s. You can actually taste what it's like to have lived in New York. And it gives not only voice to Shere Hite, but the people whom she loved and worked with. You get to see their just life as well along with her. So I am I'm pretty much blown away by this documentary. I'm overreacting, but I was gobsmacked at how much I love the disappearance of Shere Hite. If I have only one complaint, it's I didn't hear about this soon enough. So
yeah, I feel like it's going to just get lost and buried, kind of unfortunately, like a lot of the stuff in her life. And I agree with you about the New York stuff. That's very fascinating. Just even showing her first apartment that she has, which is like this basement apartment in some building in New York in the 71, and how the rats and stuff would be in there,
roaches and rats.
Yeah, and then yet she somehow looks glamorous through all of it. And that's the thing you kind of have to. It's hard to overestimate for people who don't know anything about her that she is this larger than life character in her own life. Like, she is flamboyantly, flamboyant with her style, her clothing, the way she goes through the world. There's this great scene.
And hold on. Sorry, Bruce. And it's not an affectation.
No, it's what she is.
Yeah.
And she's kind of, you feel like everyone that comes in her orbit ends up kind of falling in love with her. And she doesn't not love them, but she kind of doesn't fully attach to them. So there's all these people that still love her, and they're around her and helping her do stuff. And you see multiple at the same time that are in love with her. And that's really interesting. And then she has this way.
Even the porter at a hotel, the porter is not safe at an apartment.
Yes. And there's this one scene I want to call out to. There's a lot of scenes of her being interviewed various times on TV by various people. And for people who aren't as old as myself and maybe Greg, you won't know like Mike Douglas and Merv Griffin, but there's a scene with her. I think it's with Mike Douglas, and I want to say
David Hasselhoff.
And at first it didn't catch to me. And then one of her friends is also being interviewed at the same time. They kind of back into it with that cross interview where the person that they're talking to says like, oh yeah, she could go into full bad bitch mode and become Betty Davis. And essentially then you see the rest of the scene and she's being Betty Davis, blowing smoke in Mike Douglas's face. He's trying to call her out.
That was such a cool moment. I really loved it. That was a great moment. So many really interesting moments. Eric Holmes, if you ever have time, I don't think you have time, but the disappearance of Shere Hite, and what's interesting is a lot of people I've mispronounced names too, but throughout the documentary, you pronounce it Shere Hite. Sometimes they pronounce it, the media people, they pronounce it Shere Hite, but I think as far as the documentary goes, the correct pronunciation is Shere Hite, the disappearance of Shere Hite. It is directed by Academy Award nominee Nicole Newnham, and Nicole previously directed Crip Camp, which I still haven't seen, but after watching this, I'm off to go see Crip Camp because I love this movie. This is, for me, rating wise, hands down, 5 stars for the disappearance of Shere Hite. Bruce?
I think I'm going to go 4.5 stars, but I don't have a great reason not to be 5 stars, but this is a very, very good documentary for sure.
Okay, check it out on Friday, November 17th, specifically at the AMC Burbank 16. But again, we will be talking about this as the weeks progress to remind you listeners to search it out. And if you want, look, Bruce, you said, Mia Goth, there has to be a movie on this, right? There has to be a movie.
This movie. Or
series.
Her life is waiting to be dramatized because there is so much. I mean, it's all there, right? I mean, you've got fashion, you've got famous people, you've got vintage stuff, you've got music, you've got tons of nudity. If you want to throw that in there, it's there. You've got it all, art, photography. the sexual liberation of women. I mean, it's all there, man.
Yeah. Wow. So we don't want to give too much away what happens towards the second act, but yeah, this is a surprise of a documentary. I think this is one of our big finds this year here on CinemAddicts. So 4.5 stars for Bruce Purkey, 5 for me for the Disappearance of Shere Hite. Let's get to recommendations. We haven't heard from Eric from a while. And again, my apologies, Eric Holmes, because you actually went out and did the yeoman's work. Pay your hard-earned money, the monies you gain from your jobs and your life, hard-earned money, to watch the Marvels, which I believe bombed over the weekend. Is that a shame as far as it's the fact that it didn't do so well at the box office? Is that a waste? Should people be watching the Marvels? Your thoughts on the movie?
I don't know if it's a shame or not. I can say that the theater was pretty sparse for these type of a lot more so than I was expecting. But this one wasn't too bad. It was silly, kind of dumb. I think the best part of this movie is Brie Larson, Teyonah Parris, and Iman Vellani, kind of how their characters kind of interact with each other. Iman Vellani was probably my favorite part of this. Like her kind of, her character is just real infectious. Her joy of like, ooh, I get to be on a team with my hero or Captain Marvel. Well, I saw Captain Marvel, but as Anderson says, it's in one eye out the other. Like it didn't really land with me. Didn't really care for it, or maybe I did. Either way, I don't remember it. But this one I thought was a lot better than Captain Marvel, because this one's like, this is not a 5-star movie by any stretch of the imagination. But as far as like silly, comic book movies go, this one was pretty good. The plot was kind of all over the place. Kind of followed it a little bit, but
I think a lot of people were saying the reason why I think the Marvels didn't do so well and correct me if I'm wrong, is I think a lot of people were saying, well, I'll just wait till it gets to Disney Plus, as opposed to paying my money to seeing it opening weekend or maybe following weeks on theater. Is there a demarcation, meaning is it worth watching in the theaters, or is it okay if you watch this, I guess, good movie on your streaming service on Disney Plus?
I would say no more or less than any other superhero movie. It's fine. It's got the middling CG that all these Marvel movies have. For some reason, they spend like $300 million on these things, and the CG looks better in Alien Planet. And I'm not even joking. And Alien Planet costs like $10 to make. So I guess maybe when you make these movies, I mean, look, the CGI looks fine for a blockbuster, but I mean, we all know how these CGI companies are like, cool, we need 3 billion effect shots. Cool. Well, we got like 3-4 years to do this? No, you got 2 months. Oh, well, these are going to look like crap then, but all right. But I think just the way the Marvels team kind of bounces off each other and works together is a lot of fun to watch. Oh, there's a musical scene in this. It kind of comes out of nowhere. They go to this planet where people can only speak in song, and so it kind of turns into a musical. That was kind of silly, and I kind of dug that.
And it worked in the context of the story? I
thought it did. I've heard other reviews. It's like, oh, they sullied the good name of the MCU by throwing in a musical. I'm like, dude, that's anytime someone takes a swing like that, I'm like, go for it. I do not care. I kind of dig it. What else? And so Nia DaCosta co-wrote and directed this. She also did the Candyman movie. This is by far not better than the Candyman remake. In fact, Nia DaCosta, like, I didn't see a bunch of her. It didn't feel like a Nia DaCosta movie. It felt like a Marvel movie, just like a funner one than more entertaining one that I've seen in the past. But, that's kind of how the MCU works, isn't it? Hey, we're going to get this really exciting new filmmaker and then have them do the exact same movie that the rest of us are, that the rest of ours are like. Maybe Taika Waititi notwithstanding, but it didn't feel like a Nia DaCosta movie. It definitely felt like a MCU movie. But overall, 90 minutes. Keep doing that. That might have had a lot to do with it. They go in and out and don't kind of overstay their welcome. And there was also a good, beyond the musical scene, there was also a really good montage scene, because one of the things that happened is like they're entangled somehow So if like Captain Marvel and Ms. Marvel use their power at the same time, they swap places from where they're at, which, you know, if they're within eye shot, it's not that big of a deal. But if Captain Marvel's on some planet and Ms. Marvel's talking with her parents and they use their power, and then all of a sudden Captain Marvel's there, and parents are like, where's Kamala at? I don't know. So, but they have a little montage showing how they kind of work their powers. And so that's one. And then there's a post-credit scene. I'm sure everyone that cares already knows what it is, but I won't spoil it regardless. But that was kind of fun. Although one problem with the post-credit scene is it was actually the ending of the movie. It should have been at the end of the movie, not a post-credit scene. But the thumbs up there is it's not just, hey, look at me show up. It's actually continues the story, or rather ends the story that this movie was. So overall, not bad. Glad I saw it.
All right, the Marvels, Eric Holmes, what is your final rating on the film?
I would probably give this a 3 stars.
3 stars from Eric Holmes. That's good. Generous, mild recommendation from Eric Holmes. And then one final recommendation. Bruce Purkey, you went into David Fincher land over the past week. Your thoughts on The Killer?
Yeah, I don't have too much to say other than I originally wasn't quite as high as Eric. I kind of threw the call out to the other CinemAddicts and kind of said like what some of my nagging problems were. Most of those they actually answered for me and made me feel better about, and actually sitting on it, I feel a little bit better. I still am a little disappointed by the ending, just slightly, because I feel like it's kind of leaving a door open for more the killers. And I kind of felt like it was going down a road where it would be wrapped up in a single movie. But
you felt cheated at the ending? Is that?
I just felt it didn't satisfy me. It didn't lead to the logical conclusion that it had all evidence to be leading towards. But that's okay. It's a very minor gripe. That's like, I got this great milkshake sundae confection and I just didn't put that cherry on top. It was still pretty damn good. Yeah, this is Fincher firing on all cylinders in a way that he hasn't recently. So I think this is going to be very, very satisfying, especially to people who weren't quite into the last few movies. Although
how dare you sully Mank? Don't sully Mank.
Oh no, I'm just saying I like all that stuff. Okay. But I mean, a lot of people are kind of like, why isn't he making more, Zodiacs, or why isn't he making more, pick those kind of movies? So I think this is going to really satisfy that. Plus, this is one of those movies that has at minimum 2 or 3 fantastic sequences, and they're not all action sequences. I'd say that for me, the 2 best sequences, well, the 3 best, honestly, the opening's great. There's a fantastic fight sequence at one point, and there's a really fantastic conversation face-off between him and another person. And I think all 3 of those are just it's at a restaurant, if you're wondering, Eric.
Oh, okay. I was like, I can think of 2 really good ones. I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
So, at least those 3 things are enough to keep you going through this movie. It's very good.
Okay, so that is The Killer, currently streaming on Netflix. Bruce, what is your rating on the film?
I'm 4.5. Just because of that cherry on top wasn't quite there for me, but
still a very strong rating. And before we go, we have the box movie, which is Bob the Gambler, and Peter Beta and his MCFC, Middle Class Film Class crew, will lead us into it. Pete, why don't you drop that beat?
Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
What's in the box?
Bob Le Flambeur, directed by Jean-Pierre Melville. I saw this movie when I was in my 20s. It got me on the Jean-Pierre Melville kick, and I haven't seen it since. So my knowledge is blurry, and I just remember it not. I remember liking the movie, but I wish I'd rewatched it, in time for this episode, but I didn't. How did you feel about Bob the Gambler?
So I don't think I've seen, I'm trying to think now, I don't think I've seen any other Melville movies. I could be wrong because I didn't go back to look at his whole...
Le Samurai?
No, I have not.
Le Cercle Rouge, a.k.a. The Red Circle?
No, but that's on my list to see for sure.
Okay, An Army of Shadows, which I think is his best film. That's okay.
No, okay. So I haven't. And I think this is considered the kickoff to that I guess, a series of crime or crime world type movies. And this is considered a very, very influential movie in international cinema, from my understanding. And many, many people, great directors, cite this as one of their favorite movies.
I think Neil Jordan, sorry, Bruce, I think Neil Jordan did a remake of Bob the Gambler years later. I'll look it up right now.
Yeah, I know there was someone named made a remake of it. So Bob the Gambler, 1956, Jean-Pierre Melville. This is interesting. I did a little research. I found out was something like he was originally, I think, tagged to do Rafifi. And at the time, he didn't think, there was a reason he didn't do it. And he actually tagged Dassin to make Rafifi. And then he made this. And my understanding also is that Melville was never, like, he was always kind of outsider indie kind of guy, even in the French world. And they wouldn't like officially accept him into the director's group. So he just said, F you, I'm going to make my own movies on the side all the time. I had kept that independent spirit. My understanding is throughout. Once again, I'm no scholar on Melville, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. Probably Joseph Bridges will. And I'm okay with that. What this movie does, it's very interesting, is it's kind of a combo platter. It's half heist movie, but not near to the degree of precision and focus as Rafifi, which is like got a huge chunk that's just straight heist. This movie is somewhere in between, and I can see why I think also Tarantino loves this movie, because this is half world of denizens in Montmartre, I guess it is, the area of Paris. Half that and half heist kind of stuff, and half just the character. That's three halves. I figured out the math there of Bob. And Bob, it starts as Roger Duchesne. I don't know how to say the name. It starts out, it's morning. Morning is dawning on the netherworld of this area of Paris, I believe, if I understand correctly, called Montmartre. As the world is waking up, Bob is just finishing his night of gambling. He's walking out into the light, and there's a young woman on the street. He kind of passes her on the way, and they end up crossing paths more. He crosses paths with a pimp that he hates, and he makes it very clear very early on. He hates those people. He does not agree with that. He is in the criminal world. He seems to be respected by all these different kind of gangster types and lowlifes and all this kind of stuff. And he's kind of above them, but he's kind of not. And he used to be a bank robber. He had gone to prison. And now he's, quote, living a more straight and narrow life by just basically being a gambler, as far as you can tell. But he's living okay. But you also get the feeling that he goes through periods where he loses and he's not doing so okay. And really, the first, I don't know, I'd say 30 minutes of this movie is just kind of a day in the life with this guy. You know, you're seeing what his apartment looks like. He's meeting up with this young woman who's almost falling into prostitution and kind of taking her under his wing, but not abusing her, but introducing him to this young protege he has. And that guy immediately wants to be with her. And very quickly, he kind of goes on this gambling spree, and he discovers this casino is got, I don't know their equivalent in money, but it's like 800 million francs is going to be there at a certain time. And the inability to resist that kind of a allure is too much for him. So then I would say the middle chunk of this movie is gathering the things you do, right? Gathering the crew. Some of them are characters we've already met. Some of them are new characters, trying to figure out how they're going to, break into this place, mapping it out, all that kind of stuff. And then the final act is how that does or doesn't play out for him, and how things may or may not go awry. What you will love about this movie is, if you like this kind of thing, is going to be the look. This kind of it's kind of this crossover between American noir and European, almost getting into French New Wave. So you've kind of got the styles kind of colliding. And I think a lot of people love that about this movie. And the other side you're going to like is it's somewhat of a heist movie. Just don't go in thinking it's a super focused heist movie, or you might be disappointed. And then I really ended up loving the ending, because the ending goes a way I was not expecting.
Very, very good.
I don't know if you remember the ending of this movie.
No, I do not.
The ending, I think watching it now, you might really appreciate the ending, because the ending, it takes this weird left turn, and I cannot describe it without giving something away, but it really subverted my expectation in a way that I thought was quite awesome.
Bruce, after watching Bob the Flambeur, are you more interested in down the road watching more of Melville's films?
For sure. Yeah, I really liked the style. And it's, like I said, once again, a weird combination of, because sometimes the camera was very active and sometimes it was just like, you felt like he was just sitting in the backseat of a car filming people, very almost cinema verite style. But then other times it was locked down and moody and, cool shadows and all that stuff. Also, I wondered if the Bob character, I know this is probably not true, if it influenced James Bond at all. Because he has that rough guy, but suave kind of combo going on here, and there's a whole bunch of Baccarat in this too. So that also made me think of it too.
Oh, that's very cool. So that is Bob the Flambeur. I don't know how did you watch it on digital? I think it's available on streaming right now is this recording. It's on Canopy. But you had to actually.
I rented it because I don't have Canopy. I might get Canopy soon. If my kids got a college, through the college, I might be able to get it.
That'll save you a lot of money. We did not hear that.
Yeah, I'll spend $10,000 a year to get Canopy. It's a deal.
Okay, so just FYI, again, this is, I think you said in the 1956 or 50s or something.
56 is what I got it written down as. Who knows if I'm right.
So 1956, Bob the Flambeur, directed by Jean-Pierre Melville. Years later, in 2002, Nick Nolte starred in a remake of Bob the Gambler called The Good Thief, directed by the Crying Game filmmaker Neil Jordan. So would be I remember watching The Good Thief in 2002, I think in preparation for interviews, and being disappointed because I remember loving Bob the Gambler so much way back when. So I have no memory of either.
Yeah, this seems like it's so much of this is the style and the time that makes this work. That the story itself, trying to remake it doesn't seem like the right idea unless you totally remake it with a different style, Right.
I think the one movie that you and Eric need to see, obviously Le Cercle Rouge is really good. I remember Anderson Cowan was really bashing Le Samurai. It wasn't his film. And he just did not like it whatsoever. I love Le Samurai. Cercle Rouge is great, but Army of Shadows, once you guys see it, I think it's on the same level. I think we had this discussion earlier this week with other people on the CinemAddicts Facebook group, but Army of Shadows is on the level of The Wages of Fear, in my opinion.
Oh, yes. One last thing I'll mention. One of the best movie slaps I've ever seen is in this movie. If it's not a real slap he does to that woman, it looks like that actress was like, what happened to me just now?
Well, that's amazing. Well, this is apples and oranges, Bruce, but I know Eric is a huge fan of Rififi. Does this reach Rififi levels as far as quality cinema?
Quality, yes. I don't know if it would please him as much, because Rififi, I think what Rififi has going for it is just the amazing heist sequence. This is extended heist sequence. I think it's more of a pure heist movie. I think that's why the big warning I would give to this movie is it's not a very pure heist movie. I would say the heist here is almost given away in this movie. It's not as very important in the long run. It's more of the life of lowlifes and gangsters in, France in the 50s. I think look at it that way, with a heist kind of thrown in inside.
Okay. And that is almost a 4.5 for you, right, Bruce? Or
that's exactly it. 4.5.
4.5 stars for Bruce Purkey for Bob the Gambler, Bob the Flambeur. We're done. We're finished with episode 216. Final thoughts, Eric Holmes.
Let's see. Did a food truck, so that was good. If you're in the Colorado Springs area, we'll be doing some food trucking down at Triple Nickel. For everyone else, I guess you don't get to go. That's fine.
Okay, food truck. Triple Nickel. Okay, very cool.
I should also point out we got the Dirty South. We're supposed to mention that it's released in theaters, on demand, and digital on November 10th, which was 5 days ago, but you can watch it now.
Okay. Very cool.
And I got a couple interviews coming up. And by a couple, I mean 1,000 interviews.
Yeah, we will. There's a lot. Yes, listeners, listen to our CinemAddicts episode. We might as well call it the Eric Holmes interview feed. We'll post that on Friday. There's going to be a couple of things he's going to mention. I'll upload that on Friday. And yeah, it's good that we are opening up that interview feed as well. And we also changed hosting providers. We were Buzzsprout before, and now we're on this platform called Acast. I will put a link for it where you can get Acast on your personal feed for CinemAddicts. Okay, Bruce, final thoughts? Oh gosh, I forget the box. This is like a bit now. What's in the bleeping box, Bruce? What's in the box?
Let's see. While I'm picking stuff out of the box, I would say, hey, everyone, if you have Apple TV, you can go this Friday and watch Monarch. Check that out. And if you've been looking for a good documentary, The Disappearance of Shere Hite, for sure. All right, what do we got here? Oh, also, Paprika is going to be the next movie on the middle class film class that I had suggested. So, want to hear that? I'm going to probably go rewatch it because I have to refresh my memory. The World According to Garp.
The World According to Garp. Is that your personal vote?
I don't remember. I have to look at my list to find out.
Okay. Definitely check out Bruce's. Look, I have to put it on our findyourfilms.com website for the thing. I haven't gotten yet, but there's like I think 70 or 80 movies that are in the box right now, Bruce, or maybe 50 movies that are in the box, and there's still 20 that Bruce has to.
Yeah, that have to make slips of paper for. Yeah, The World According to Garp is a movie I loved back when it first came out, and I haven't seen probably for 25 years. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have never probably watched it, and it might end up being the best lost. John Lithgow and the best lost. My brain's forgetting.
Robin Williams,
and
Natasha Kinski.
No. Who's the mom?
Oh, the mom. I'll look that up right now.
Oh my gosh.
I always get
There's so many great actors in this, and I bet so many people have not seen it.
Glenn Close, right? Glenn Close?
Glenn Close.
Yeah.
People that are younger than probably 40 or 35 have not even probably heard of this movie, and they will be quite surprised by how awesome this movie is.
Oh, really cool. When I was a youth, I always got Hotel New Hampshire and The World According to Garp mixed
Same
up.
author, very different, very much different movies. This movie is so much better, I think, than Hotel New Hampshire, which is Nastasia Kinski, I believe.
Yes, very good. Bruce
Jodie
Purkey.
Foster.
Yes, very good. And Eric Holmes, you wanted to say something, or you had something? Oh no, you good? Oh, you good? You don't think so? Okay.
Oh yeah, Thanksgiving. Eli Roth Thanksgiving comes out in theaters this week.
You gonna watch it?
Probably. Okay. I'm one of Eli Roth's like 3 fans. Like everyone else always craps on his movies. I'm like, I kind of like them. Okay. I don't know what's wrong with y'all, but my name is Paul and I dig them.
Okay, we'll be back next week with Eric's take on Thanksgiving along with other movies. Thanks again for listening to us this week on CinemAddicts. Again, check us out again on Friday for those interviews. Have a great week watching movies, and of course, here's Claire.
Bye everybody, thank you for joining CinemAddicts.